Is the DJI Mini 3 Pro the perfect travel drone? I've also bumped into, on this trip in Mallorca, a professional TV cameraman, and I've got his opinion on the drone. Being sub 250 grams is a huge advantage when you're traveling abroad. And crucially, when you're going through the airport, it just feels a lot better carrying this drone. Now, I've traveled a lot with the Air 2S before, and don't get me wrong, that's definitely a travel drone. You can still take that around, but this just feels a lot better. And if you're taking things like your gimbal and everything, it just means you can be a more complete filmmaker with your whole setup. So the next reason why the DJI Mini 3 Pro is so perfect for traveling is the low propeller noise. I can't stress how, when you nearby hotels and that sort of thing, when you're getting up for sunrise, you don't want to be waking up the guests. Maybe they've had a night out before, you're not going to be popular. The next reason why I love this drone for traveling is the D-Cine light. It's awesome, it's got amazing colors, and you've got this dynamic range to capture the details. Now, it's obviously not as good as, say, the Mavic 3, but for a travel drone this size, it's really incredible, the colors and the dynamic range that you can capture. But something DJI don't really make a fuss about is you do need to have it in D-Cine like to have that 10-bit color. If you have it in normal mode, you've only got 8-bit color, so it doesn't give you the same flexibility for post-production and color editing. So of course the DJI Mini 3 Pro isn't the perfect drone. Because of its size, there are compromises. The main one being, this drone does really well for its size in the wind, but you do have to be realistic. Some instances, let's say you're flying on the ocean near cliffs, the drone might look stable on the image, but it can actually be blowing around quite ferociously in the wind. So you do have to be really careful with your close gaps, because a bit of gust of wind, even though you're stationary on the sticks, and your drone's going to go off and could crash into the water, crash into the rocks and then into the water. So that's just one of the, if you're going to places like Portugal that are very windy, or maybe Lanzarote, Fuerteventura, that's when you might want to consider a heavier drone, because quite often those places, particularly Fuerteventura, it is windy quite frequently, and I personally wouldn't plan a drone trip there with a DJI Mini 3 Pro. But most places I've been to in Europe, even Portugal, it is a windy place, but you tend to get on-off days. So one day it's windy, one day it's calm. So something you also have to be realistic with the DJI Mini 3 Pro is that because of its size, you sometimes do get a jello effect, I've noticed, particularly with slider shots when you're near to buildings. It's just something about the slider motion. I've also heard when people have it on bypass mode with the obstacle avoidance, I prefer to have it on brake, so I know if my flight hasn't been smooth, the drone will stop and I'll take it back and have another go, so the drone is going straight forwards. That's just my preference. Now, I'm sure you can get good shots with bypass mode, I have seen them, but personally I think you're more likely to get that jello effect when you have that mode on. On this trip, I bumped into a TV cameraman who works for one of the major networks, and I asked him, what do you think of the Mini 3 Pro? So he was filming on the Mavic 3 Classic, and he's actually told me that now DJI have released the new Pro version, he's going to have to go out and buy that. And he was a little bit like, oh, they know what they're doing, DJI, don't they? I've got to get the next one. It's all part of the game, isn't it? What did he think about the Mini 3 Pro? He said it was the best drone ever, but he can't use it for his TV production. Unfortunately, perceptions do count, and if he turns up on a job with this, he's not really going to be taken seriously as a drone operative. However, he does use it as a backup drone sometimes. So it does show you that the actual video quality is usable for television. And I said to him, is it about 90% you can capture the shots well enough on this? And he said, yeah, it does depend on the context. In some situations, I have seen the footage on this drone fall apart a little bit, even in the middle of the day, particularly sometimes when I've done top-down shots. It can be difficult. Remember, we've also got to be realistic that it doesn't have variable aperture. So yes, the DJI Mini 3 Pro is the best travel drone ever. And that's just not my opinion, that's the opinion of a professional TV from a major network corporation. Travel drone, best drone ever. You can't get hired, you're not going to get hired for Netflix, BBC, Amazon with this drone, but you can have it as a backup, and also know that sometimes these professional operatives, they're a little bit jealous of the travel operators because they've got so much paperwork that they've got to go through to check with the larger drones to try and fly here. Because they're working with major networks, there's even more people to contact, forms to fill in. He was telling me that he was flying a drone in Mallorca, and while he was setting off the drone, he had to send 3 different forms to contact DJI to say, we've got authorization to do this. So remember guys, sometimes you might watch these programs and feel slightly jealous of the equipment that professional drone operators have, but they do have a lot of red tape, and you can still sell stock footage and that can end up on these programs sometimes, or create your YouTube channels, whatever you get into. Now, the only instance where I wouldn't recommend the DJI Mini 3 Pro would be if someone has the Mini 2 and they're looking to eventually get into TV or film, etc., into documentaries. That's when it gets a little bit more complicated, because you have to think about the extra cost. Are you going to be getting a new controller for this, etc., versus getting the Mavic 3 Classic, which then you can really launch your career as a drone operative, have your own website and everything. So it does depend on your own situation. But yes, for a travel drone, or if you're a videographer, let's say you're doing weddings, the low propeller noise, I think that's when this drone really comes into its own. And most importantly of all, it's the most fun drone I've ever had, and it's just amazing. One other little slight thing is, do be careful with this though, because it is so small and so quiet, sometimes it can make you a little bit complacent, and I nearly today, like an absolute moron, nearly forgot to pack it up. I actually left it flying and I was rushing from one spot to another. I'd been filming too many days in a row and my brain was slightly frazzled. But the drone did a great job. It landed itself, everything was fine, and I've got it back here. Just my stupidity. It actually feels like a flying camera, you know. It doesn't feel like you're taking the drone out like you traditionally do. You've got this really noisy thing in your hand. It just feels fun to use. So yeah, I'd 100% recommend this for travel. Make sure you always carry with you this little screwdriver, because you need this to do the propellers.
Yeah,
and
I made a mistake. It was just a bad mistake. Landed it, and when you're landing it, it's going down, but you still have control, so you can position it where it's landing when it's going down. And as it was going down, the wind took it a little bit into these rocks. It was only a little bit, but it damaged the propellers. Luckily, Ian had this. That would have ruined the whole holiday for me.
Yeah, it would have been. So these little things, I mean, even though it looks absolutely tiny, imagine trying to find this in a local Spanish DIY shop or something.
We would have to go to Parma Town.
I didn't really know what this for. I thought it was just to get the SD card in, but you need this to change your propellers. So make sure you keep this, because Dave didn't have his, so have it with you all the time.
Well, that's where, like, I did get the drone for £600 second hand, DJI Mini 3 Pro, Fly More combo, come with the propellers, and everything else, but it didn't come with that screw, and that screw is vital, especially on trips like this. You need to have spare propellers. You're coming to film, you're filming, everything's banked on it, you know, you're going to be so gutted afterwards.